Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing us another fantasy football video. You guys know what time it is. I'm doing the second part of my trade video every single week. This one, I'll be going over players that I'd be looking to sell high on. So these are guys that, of course, you don't necessarily just need to give away for free, but they're guys that I think are a little bit overvalued relative to what you're going to get out of them the rest of the season. And they are guys that I'm at least, if I have them on my own roster, I am looking to kind of ship them off. Obviously, of course, you want to make sure you're going and getting the best value you can, but these are guys that I think are overvalued relative to their current or the level of production they're going to give you the rest of the way, and I think it makes a lot of sense to at least consider trading them. So if you haven't seen it already, I put out a trade targets video earlier today. Highly recommend you guys go watch that one. It's a lot of fun. I love making these videos. I'm that guy in every league that's sending out a bunch of trade offers, and this is just part of how I enjoy fantasy football and part of how I find a lot of success as well. I think I make a lot of really good trades, and over the course of a long season, it ends up being really beneficial to my roster. So if you guys have any specific trade questions, let me know in the comments below. I love interacting with you guys there, and let's just get into it, guys. We got 5 players today. So to start things off here, I want to highlight Alvin Kamara. I don't know how much you can get for him, and it sucks a little bit. I made these slides yesterday, and then came out that he got hurt. He hurt his foot in practice today, so it might be a little bit difficult to move off of him. But he honestly hasn't looked good to me for over a year now. He had that really fantastic start to the year last year. I believe he had a 3-touchdown, 200-yard game in week 3 of 2024. And since then, he's been a low-end running back 2 the entire rest of the way. Got hurt over the back half of last year as well. Just has not been a real difference maker or even a reliable fantasy asset since about week 3 last season. If you just watch the Saints play, it looks more and more like Kendre Miller is just getting more and more involved. And like Kendre Miller, it just seems like a better, at least between the tackles runner. They're also not really involving Alvin Kamara in the passing game, which is super disappointing because you'd have thought that if the Saints were going to be super up-tempo, that combine that with Alvin Kamara's ability to catch passes and negative game scripts, you'd have thought that Kamara could have just sort of PPR'd his way towards to being a really relevant fantasy asset, but we haven't seen that. And it just seems like more and more Kendre Miller is going to get more and more integrated. Alvin Kamara always an injury risk for a player at his age and with an injury history like Alvin Kamara does. I think the only real out for Kamara is if he were to get traded to a team like the Chiefs. If the Chiefs were just to turn him into a workhorse running back, which I don't think they would really do. I don't think there's a huge difference, honestly, at this point in their careers between a guy like Alvin Kamara and Kareem Hunt. Kamara's better, obviously, but I don't know if the Chiefs would really view that as a significant upgrade, especially with the huge contract implications of Alvin Kamara right now. So I think name value alone is going to get you low end running back 2 value for Kamara, and I don't feel good if I have him on my roster and I'm playing him as my running back 2 right now. I think there's just so many guys that I feel a lot better at RB2, and I just don't see the ceiling here, right? This is a crappy offense. He's not exactly an explosive player anymore. He's sharing touches in a backfield that's not very valuable anyway. I would just look to capitalize now because, if he misses this week and Kendre Miller goes out and balls out, then you might be looking at a guy who's basically just a third down back with a big name. So definitely want to avoid that if I can. Look to move off of him. Next player we'll go over today is going to be Tony Pollard. Finally got into the end zone this last week, which kind of makes it a great week to sell him because if he doesn't do that, he's just not fantasy relevant at all on a weekly basis. The Cardinals are just horrendous, right? They absolutely collapsed in that game, and that's the only reason we saw Tony Pollard even end up putting a remotely respectable week. First time all year he's cracked 10 fantasy points. He's the RB24 right now, and his usage is only going to trend downwards as Spears gets more and more involved. Not that Tyjae Spears is going to come in here and take over the backfield by any means. Pollard's a good player. He's going to get a lot of work, but if you lose really any pass catching upside in an offense that's not going to score a lot of touchdowns, behind a horrendous offensive line on a team that just doesn't really look like they have any life at all. I just don't know if there's really any value here with Tony Pollard going forward. This 4-game stretch before Tyjae Spears came back was supposed to be his peak, right? If you're drafting him as a 0 RB drafter, he was supposed to be a low-end running back 1, high-end running back 2 for you for 4 weeks, and then sort of fall back into being that low-end running back 2 the rest of the way. What we saw right here was not that. We saw him be the low-end running back 2, and we're going to see that usage just trend down a little bit going forward. Really tough to trust a guy like this in your fantasy lineups going forward. Just when you need him to score a touchdown to make you happy, and his offense scores 1, maybe 2 touchdowns every single week, you really need that to be Tony Pollard for you to be happy with him in your lineup. And there are just so many running backs that I'd prefer. Typically speaking, every week there's going to be a backup running back that gets a start that I would rather play over Tony Pollard. I just don't think Pollard has a whole lot of value. I think you could generally, I would take Ramondre Stevenson over Tony Pollard the rest of the season. Tony Pollard is not a guy that I'm excited about. I don't think you're going to get a lot for him straight up, but I think you could pair him with a player to maybe upgrade at running back, like pair him with a wide receiver too, and go get like a fringe top 12 kind of guy. Because a lot of teams need running back depth or need depth at a position. So if you can pair Pollard with something else, I think you can trade up there and get a good asset. And I'm just not excited about him at all. I don't think there's a whole lot of fantasy value there. And if you can still get something out of him, I'd be interested in doing that. Got our first big name on this list, Nico Collins. I know it's tough to sell a guy that's on his bye week. Generally speaking, at least teams are just a little bit less interested in trading for a guy that's on his bye, so you might have to wait a week. But obviously, better for you if you can sell him now. Otherwise, you eat a bye week and then trade him. That's just kind of sad. He's been good the last 3 weeks, but everything has sort of just been set up for him to be awesome. They've had fantastic matchups. This is a team that's still been trailing in a lot of their games, and then obviously you got the Titans and the Ravens the last 2 weeks, arguably two of the worst defenses in the NFL at this point. And he still wasn't special over them, right? Like you drafted Nico Collins thinking he had the upside to be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy, and that is just very clearly not there. Right now he's the wide receiver 18 on the season. I feel like that's probably right about where he ends up finishing, right? Like he's had a couple touchdowns. It's not like he's been bad by any means, but he's by no means been the guy that you drafted him to be. You wanted him to be a true difference maker for you at the position, and I don't think he's going to be that. And the defense in Houston is just way too good for them to end up in a shootout at any point. They're not going to, if and when they score points, they're going to win games easily and just bleed clock out like we saw the last 2 weeks. And when they don't score points, Nico's not going to do much, right? So there's no real game script I can see where Nico Collins ends up going out and being a guy that catches 9 passes for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like that ceiling that we've seen over the past couple of years just isn't really there right now. And I think you can still get wide receiver 1 value out of him. Like there are guys that clearly lesser names that I think are going to be better than him the rest of the way. Guys like Jalen Waddle, Rome Odunze, Deebo Samuel. Rome's through his bye already. That's perfect. Devo's got a fantastic playoff stretch. Like, I think we'd probably even try and get a piece on top of those guys for Nico Collins, and all 3 of them straight up are probably better assets than Nico the rest of the way. And I know it's tough to sell the name there, but I think all 3 of those guys are better bets. And there's a lot of situations like that. Quentin Johnson comes to mind. Like, there are players that people just don't like the name value of nearly as much that are still going to give you more value the rest of the way. So I think Nico's a guy that I would at least consider trading if you can get good value there, because I just don't see it for him to be a wide receiver 1 the rest of the way here. Next up, we got another big receiver here, and it's DK Metcalf. And the issue here is just the usage isn't where we want it to be. The primary argument for DK was that he's the only guy they could really throw the ball to, and Arthur Smith is just really good at finding a way to throw the ball to guys that aren't very good at football. That's just going to be how it works. They're never going to make DK Metcalf like a focal point of the offense. He's not going to get 10, 12, 15 target games. And the only really good game we got out of DK over the last 4 weeks, or the first 4 weeks of the season, it took an 80-yard touchdown for us to get there, right? That's not going to happen on a very reliable basis. This is not an offense that really pushes the ball downfield. You're not getting like manufactured touches for DK. I view him as more of like a boomer bust low-end wide receiver 2 the rest of the way. And there are just guys that I think you could easily trade him straight up for that I would prefer. I prefer Marvin Harrison, Tedro McMillan, Jalen Waddle, Drake London, Brian Thomas Jr. Those are guys that I would all prefer over him. You could throw Quentin Johnson in there if you could pull that off. Rome, of course. There are guys that are certainly not performing at a very high level that you could easily trade DK for. George Pickens, plenty of guys that I would just much rather have. Cortland Sutton, I think you could maybe get for DK. A lot of those mid-tier wide receiver 2s that I just think are better than him the rest of the way. I think the road's going to be too bumpy with Metcalf just because the usage isn't where we want it, and you're going to need that big play or a touchdown, and I just don't know how often that's going to come in this offense. And the last player we'll talk about here is going to be a tight end. It's going to be Travis Kelce, coming off his first good game of the season. Actually, somehow the tight end 6 on the year. It feels like he's been a lot worse than that, but that just goes to show what tight ends normally do. He's got the second worst schedule for tight ends the rest of the season. Again, I like to reference strength of schedule. It's fantasy adjusted points allowed, so compared to a player's average, how many points does each team give up to each position? The Chiefs over the next 12 games have the second worst schedule for tight ends. That stat's obviously going to become more and more relevant as we get deeper into the season, have a larger sample size, but after 5 weeks, it starts to become pretty useful. We've also had a scenario here where Kelce's the tight end 6, and you've had no Xavier Worthy for most of the year, and even the couple games he's played, he's not been a full snap share guy. Rashee Rice hasn't been there. Brashard Smith is getting more involved in terms of manufactured touches. this is as good as it's going to get for Travis Kelce, and he's the tight end 6. So I think you're going to get to a point where he's basically like a low-end streaming option every single week. Has touchdown upside every week just because he and Mahomes have chemistry, and Mahomes obviously elevates the offense quite a bit. But if your tight end needs a touchdown to give you a good week, then you might as well stream the position because that's how every streaming tight end is. So if you can get legitimate value out of Kelce, if from somebody who views him as like a legitimate difference maker at the position, I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't view him as a difference maker the rest of the way, and I'd be more than willing to give him up and just stream the position if I had to. So that'll do it for the sell high candidates this week. Up next, I'll be going over my starts and sits, so I will touch on every single game this week, go over every single fantasy relevant player, and do my best to help you guys get your lineup set the rest of the way. I split that into 2 videos every single week. That way I can record one on Friday, get you guys a little bit more up-to-date information because we just don't have all the practice reports and all the injury report information up until, honestly, sometimes until Sunday. But the longer I can wait, the better information I can give you. But, of course, I've got to give you guys something Thursday morning so that you guys can get your lineup set for Thursday. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. There's 5 videos every single week. If you're finding these useful at all, if you don't want to miss it, make sure you'll stick around the entire rest of the way, and hopefully we can win some championships together. So, any specific trade questions, let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you guys with the next one, guys. I appreciate it. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.